That was a super long minute, but I definitely felt that. I think I felt the theme. Welcome back to our second episode of our discussion of a book, of the first discussion of a book that we're doing, but this is the second episode of that discussion, right?
Yeah.
I'm fumbling. Welcome back. Episode two of our book discussion, where we are doing the 7.5 deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. Here to do this book discussion with me is Stephanie. Stephanie, welcome back. This is
Thanks.
again your return after a long break from Earth 2. It's good to have you back. Well,
Thanks.
what's it that long?
It's been a minute. I don't
It's been a
think I kind of got burnt out on like TV and movies, so that kind of put me out of the running for a long time.
I totes get it. I totally get it. Not totes. So we left off. Where's our little guide? The super great handwriting. We we left off on chapter 9. The last time we did this, and we read. I think what day did we do the first episode? It was like
We did it on Sunday.
on Sunday, and today is Friday. We are
Did, yeah, we did it on the first.
burning through this book.
It's a page
Well,
turner.
it really is. It really is. And I will say this though. Again, okay, let me just say this before we go in. So the first, I now it makes sense. So I have to send a shout out to James on you know blocking the book the way he did it, right? And I think it's perfect because the first block, the first 9 chapters, speed read because it was is a page turner. Like it's so exciting. It brings you into the book. And I'll be honest with you, when I get to the second one, I'm still reading I'm so into the book now. I'm still reading it, but I'm kind of annoyed.
Why?
I It's because of the host that we get in the second block.
Hmm. Yeah, the day 5 and 6, no, 4 and 5.
Four
Days
and
four
five,
and
yeah.
five are a little bit rough for sure.
Still an exciting book to go through. It's just that I have to go through it as
Not an
what's
awful human.
yes. As too well, we find out that what's his name is awful, but then we get the other guy at the end of it. I
Yeah,
can. It's not a
should
spoiler.
we do like a little recap of what we're not going to be able to go through the level of detail we did last time, but should we do like a little recap of like what
Yes,
happened?
previously on. Well, so we are awoke, we're woken up. No, you do. Let me let you do this, please.
You want me to do it?
Yes, you do it because I'm
Okay.
burned.
So, um, we, I want to remember the exact spot we stopped last time. We read to page 72 last time. So we wake up on day 3. And he, right? This is our first day on day 3?
Okay,
Sorry.
yes, it's our first. It's our first day on day 3 because we have done day 1 and 2,
Okay.
and then we end at day 2.
Sorry, it's day 5 is so exhilarating that it totally eclipses day 3. And so I was like, what happens on day 3? So we
It
wake up
does.
in day 3, and we're this time Aiden is in the body of Mr. Davies, right? Donald
Yes,
Davies, who is a socialite,
yes.
and very shaken up by the situation and like learning what he learned as Sebastian Bell and then getting pulverized as Mr. Collins. He
Hmm.
decides to ignore the plague doctor's advice and tries to flee Blackheath. So he rouses the stable master, gets a car instead of a horse because it's storming. And so the stable master's like, you don't get my horses. Don't be an idiot. Here's a car. He then tries to drive away. He has an encounter with the plague doctor in the middle of nowhere on the road, and the plague doctor kind of implores him, like, stop wasting your days. Like, you cannot escape. But he ignores him and keeps driving. Then the car breaks down, and then he decides to start walking. And then he passes out on the road, and we wake up in day 4.
Mm-hmm.
Day 4 is he wakes up as Lord Ravencourt, the banker,
Yes.
who is days 4 and 5 are the hardest narratives to sit behind. Ravencourt himself is super interesting. Ravencourt is a well-to-do banker. He's very smart, very observant, very quick-witted. However, he's also very fat, and Stuart Turton triples down on this, which is what I kind of was alluding to in the last episode.
Okay, I will say this. I'm sorry to cut you off. I'll say this though. What you did in the last episode to talk about how Stuart Turton talked about him, then I'm like, oh, okay. I'm in my mind. Well, this is it. We're never going to see this again. And when we get to day 5, and he just lays it in super thick, just goes on and on, and literally every move he makes,
yeah, I'm a little loath to say it. Stuart Turton writes it. His writing is so good, and it's just kind of wasted in this perspective, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not to say that being a fat person and particularly being having mobility issues wouldn't impact somebody in Aidan Bishop's situation. It's just that it's very much dressed in negativity. Everything is bemoaned. Everything is awful. He's disgusted. He's shamed. It's just really bad. But we do learn a ton in Ravencourt's day. So in day 4, Aidan Bishop kind of gets his ish together, and he recruits his Ravencourt's valet to help him. And so he convinces Cunningham of what's happening and that he's not actually Ravencourt, that he's Aidan. He does some playing with the future in order to do this. He discovers that Cunningham has a secret, and so he blackmails Cunningham with this secret by telling Cunningham to look under the chair. There's a note revealing the secret, which in the moment Ravencourt does not know, but he knows that a future host will figure it out and tape it to the bottom of the chair. And so Cunningham is won over to his side, and Cunningham kind of does some errands for him throughout the day. Some interesting highlights with Cunningham are that Cunningham is not he's an ally, but also he has his own agenda, and he does not immediately give all information to Ravencourt. He's clearly working his own things on the sideline, and so there are some things that he outright refuses to talk to Ravencourt about. And so we know that he's involved a little deeper than Ravencourt learns, but we don't know what that means yet. But so he we have another conversation with Daniel, which I really want to talk about that scene in particular.
Yes.
We talk to the plague doctor more, so we get some more rules of the game throughout day 4, and we get a little bit of more rules on day 6. But Ravencourt is basically all about information gathering.
Didn't we go back to day 2?
We did, yeah. It's at some point Ravencourt, because he's so inactive, all of his activity for the day wears him out, and he takes a nap. And when he takes that nap, when he falls asleep, he wakes back up as Mr. Collins.
And we learn some more rules.
And Anna is there. And so we discover that when Sebastian Bell and Evelyn visit Mr. Collins, and there's a maid in the room, that maid is Anna. And so she explains to him, every time you sleep, you will wake up in the next host. And then when that host goes to sleep or dies, you will then cycle back to the next host. So through Ravencourt and through day 5, there's a little bit of cycling through that day's dedicated host, Mr. Collins, and eventually also Mr. Davies, Donald Davies, the guy who drove off. Yeah. But highlights through Ravencourt's information gathering is that someone someone breaks into Helena Hardcastle, so she's the matron of the house. Someone breaks into her room and steals one day out of her agenda. So we don't know, and it's that day, so we don't know what her appointments are for that day in Blackheath. There's a gun missing.
The gun, I think the gun missing, isn't that the gun she shows up with when she's with Sebastian at the at the mausoleum? Isn't that the gun she
Yeah.
does?
Yeah, so
Right.
there's like a twin revolver
Right.
case, and
Right.
one of the guns is gone from the case. Yeah, I Ravencourt immerses himself into the activities of Blackheath a little bit more, right? Sebastian Bell is kind of like a frightful creature, and he stays to the sidelines and he participates as little as possible, where Ravencourt attends the ball. So even though he's not very ambulatory, he still attends. He goes to dinner, he goes to the ball, he watches the Evelyn. We get to see Evelyn's murder for the first time, and he tries to catalog as much as possible. He's just very much in the
information gathering.
Yeah, he also tries to change the day with Ravencourt, and ultimately he fails. But I like that he tries. So he sends Cunningham to introduce himself to Sebastian Bell because he doesn't remember meeting Cunningham as Sebastian Bell, and so he wants to see if he can change things. But Cunningham isn't successful, so he's testing the waters a little bit. I think that's kind of the highlights with. Other than the rules, which we can go over in depth.
I think yes, he does leave the note in the encyclopedia saying if you are me, like when he finds out some more. I think he finds something out and then he leaves a note. Does he find something? Oh no, he just leaves a note in he's guessing. That was because that was the beginning of it. He leaves a note. He's guessing if you know who you're gonna know where this is, and he.
He leaves a note for himself, for his other hosts in the encyclopedia, and he's woken up by Daniel. And we'll circle back to that conversation because that's super fascinating. Okay, so then we hop back into the like you said, we hop into Mr. Collins, and we don't those scenes are always brief, right? He's pulverized. He cannot retain consciousness very long. Also, Dr. Dickey is actively drugging him, and it's TBD on is Dickey drugging him because he's in such bad shape, like he's likely to hurt himself further, or is Dickey mischievous and doing something that we don't know about yet? But in those interactions, we learn that Anna doesn't retain her memories from day to day. She starts totally afresh every day, except that there are a couple things that she does know every day, but we don't really get a sense for like what does she remember every single day versus what does she have to figure out every day. That is why she has that book in that scene with Sebastian Bell. She is keeping a meticulous log as she learns information. She is filling this book up with all the information possible so that she will know where everyone is at any given moment. And we also learn that she is given instructions. So the first part of her morning is very busy completing tasks, but we don't yet know what those tasks are. So still a lot of mystery around Anna. We have a few more interactions with the plague doctor. The plague doctor tries to convince him that like you can't get out, you can't shirk the system, you need to just play the game. Anna is not your friend.
Yeah, and I think that's when the doctor tells him he can't really change circumstances, right? Because he is because this is between Ravencourt and Davies, right? And he's like, okay, I'm gonna just save Anna or stop the murder by finding out the murderer before they do commit the crime. And the plague doctor is like, that's gonna happen. Like that, you can't change that. That's something that's gonna happen. So instead of trying to solve them, instead of trying to find them.
Daniel is the one who tells him that. The plague doctor is like, the plague doctor kind of plays it loose. The plague doctor is like, you'll show up at 11 or prevent the murder and tell me who's going to plan it.
Right.
Yeah.
Daniel's doing this. Like, you can't change the day.
You can't change it.
The murder. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
Daniel's a little dated, I think.
Yeah. Super sus. Okay, so after Ravencourt, Ravencourt goes to the ball. He watches the Evelyn's death play out. And the way that the death plays out is at dinner, it's announced that Evelyn will marry Ravencourt. And she gets so upset at this announcement that she flees the table. There's some awkward commotion. The night progresses. She doesn't come back for a while. She eventually comes back. There's a big hoopla. She then like runs out of the ballroom to like a little looking well that's right outside the ballroom in the yard. And then she commits suicide. And that's death one of Evelyn Hardcastle. We then wake up the next day in Jonathan Derby, who is on the little invite bill at the beginning of the book. He is listed as a socialite. He is Millicent's son. She's a super old woman that like interacts with Ravencourt. She's supposed to be meeting with Helena Hardcastle. She's just kind of like a, you know, a pretty classic rich old woman who gets in everyone's business. And Jonathan Derby is a difficult... Yeah, he's a difficult perspective. This would be one of the content / trigger warnings. While Derby doesn't commit anything on page, it is thoroughly established that he is a serial rapist, that he's a very violent man.
And gets away with it because of his mother.
Yeah, and more than that, right? So mom somehow is like paid things off, paid women off or paid their families off. We don't get the details. We just know that mom has thrown a lot of money to cover up what it is that Jonathan Derby has done. We also kind of learned that Dr. Dickey has been involved in some of these cover-ups. Dr. Dickey and Millicent have like some kind of affection. We don't know the nature of it, but you know, they're I
think it's more so Dickey likes her and she knows it. I feel like she exploits Dickey's affection for her.
Yeah, it's also implied that Dickey like helped her birth Jonathan Derby. Like he's just known Jonathan his entire life. Anyway, so he's a scumbag, super scumbag. And at this point, on that note, two things are like really thoroughly established. One is that it's mentioned before, but it's like really established here that every host alters the way that Aiden experiences the day, not just physically, but also mentally. So he really feels that stark difference between Ravencourt's wit and Derby's lack of it. And so to some extent, like he is at the mercy of what his host is able to do emotionally and intellectually. There's also this really haunting line about how the hosts are fighting back. There are multiple times in Derby's day where Aiden cannot control the impulses of Derby. And he lashes out in violence. He gets really anxious. He can't sit still or employ his mind. And so he resorts to violence instead. And it's like really challenging for Aiden to keep Derby in check. And that's a super interesting aspect of this.
And I think what I thought was super interesting about Derby's day was it brought back, or it goes almost full circle to our day one, you know, the first chapter, where I got fooled and I thought, you know, at first I thought that was Anna and then I thought that was Evelyn. But it changed that whole perspective because now we get to see, you know, the thing with the compass comes back up, the thing with the almost murder or the murder in the beginning of the book comes back up. And it's also the reason all of that happens is because Jonathan tried to do something gross with Evelyn's handmaid. And
so there's...
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it's fine. There's like a previous history between Evelyn's maid and Jonathan Derby, but also as Ravencourt, Aiden finds out that someone is going to attack so the girls are out for a walk in the morning, Evelyn and Madeline, and Ravencourt finds out that someone is going to attack Evelyn in the morning. And so as Derby, he tries to interrupt that and like figure out who is attacking them, but he becomes the attacker. And because he's a known rapist and he's a known assaulter, like Evelyn points a gun at him and like threatens to kill him and says basically like, if I didn't like your mom so much, I'd kill you right now. Like you need to leave. And so he becomes just like Daniel said he would, like he becomes the event that he's trying to prevent. And then he's in the forest and he's super distressed. And it turns out that he's the one who sneaks up behind Sebastian Bell to give him the compass back. not the footman, which is kind of what's alluded to previously.
Right.
So we're starting to see the machinations of Blackheath and how it really works, of like, you are in every scene, like as Aiden Bishop, like you're everywhere involved. And so that's super interesting. Derby tries to get up some other shenanigans. He tries to figure out who breaks into Helena Hardcastle's room. He gets sidelined by Stanwin because his mom owes money to Stanwin. He gets into a tussle with Stanwin's thug. And then he witnesses, he gets knocked out. So he's out for a long time, unconscious. And then his mother dies and he loses a couple hours to grief, even though he's like, he knows it's not my mom. He can't not get lost in that grief. And then Evelyn interrupts him crying at his mom's bedside.
Was crazy.
Yeah. So it's in the evening. The ball is happening somewhere between so he watches he watch at dinner. He waits outside of the dining hall and watches for the moment when Evelyn flees and watches after Ravencourt's marriage announcement. She flees to her room. He watches that. And then as he's watching things kind of go down, Dickie pulls him aside and lets him know that his mom died. He then goes and loses an hour or two to grieving with his mom.
Before that, Cunningham walks up to him and gives him a note about all of us need to come together, something like that. I'm reading all of this and I'm like, it's mind blown. This is when I think I'm starting to be able, like, I'm getting back to like flipping pages at this point, right?
Yeah.
Because it's tough going through Jonathan's day, with the conversation he had with his mom earlier in the day, to the thing with Stanwin, to him being knocked out, and then going back to Donald Davies, and then when we get to this point, I'm like, okay, this is all of that is, he's still a piece of shit, but I feel better at this point.
It still served a purpose.
Yes.
Yeah. So after, so as he's waiting, I know we're getting a little bit in the weeds, but the day 5 is really when things pick up, and like the plot thickens, so to speak, and the timeline kind of increases. Cunningham comes up to him and like tries to have a conversation with him, and they kind of like miss each other, like they're confused. Clearly, Cunningham has been given information that Derby does not, or Aiden currently does not possess as Derby. He gives him a note, seemingly from a different host, a future host, calling everyone together, but Derby doesn't understand, and he tries to get information from Cunningham about like who gave this to you and when, and Cunningham like won't answer the question. Then he gets interrupted.
And then Dickie comes, excuse me, your mom's dead. All of that happens, and then Evelyn comes in the room and is like, okay, great, you're done. You're done. This is not even your mom. Like, I think it was almost something like, why are you super sad? This is not even your mom, or something like that. Or you're supposed to like come watch my murder and help me. Like it was to that effect, right?
Yeah,
it wasn't necessarily those words.
She storms in and is like, I'm under very clear instructions. You need to give me the revolver in your pocket, and then you need to be where you're supposed to be. And he's like, what? And she's like,
falls.
Yeah, she's like, I don't know what else you need me to tell you. Like, get it together, man. Give me your gun and go where you're supposed to be. She knows that someone is out to kill her. We learn that someone has slipped a note under her door in the morning, and basically tells her that if she doesn't die, someone very close to her will die instead. And then she also tells Derby that Rashton, the constable, has been investigating and has a theory, and so she's just hoping against hope that Rashton will come in at the last minute and solve this, but she needs the gun and he needs to go where he's supposed to go. And then he remembers that as Derby, he had a conversation with Anna in the forest that morning, which I forgot to include, where she is setting stones as markers, and he has a stone that he needs to go stand beside, and he cannot be anywhere other than that stone, and it's critical that he be there. So he gives her the gun, and he goes out to the rock, and he again watches Evelyn die. This is Evelyn's second death, and it plays out up to her death. It plays the same, but after she shoots herself, it's different.
Everything changes. Yes.
Yeah. So in death number 1, Michael is immediately out there crying for her, holding her, trying to, screaming for Dickie to revive her. I mean, he's just distraught. But this time, Michael is running through the forest and slams into him. We don't know why. We don't know what's going on. We don't know what. And so there's just this moment where, like, up until this point, Aiden has been trying to affect change and he's absolutely failed. But then change happens in front of him and he doesn't understand what caused it, why it's happening. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Who knows? And then we wake up on day 6 as a very old man.
Before we wake up, so Aiden is Michael and Aiden tussle for a little bit. They're separated.
Yeah.
Michael hears a sound, looks up. He feels like it's the footman. He gives chase. Well, he tries not to
forget this. Sorry.
He tries not to give chase because Anna's like, he remembers in his head that Anna was like, don't do it. Because we forget that there's a plan. We also didn't mention the fact that I think he and someone else came up with a plan to find the footman and jump the footman before they get jumped, because Ravencourt almost gets got by the footman.
Daniel approaches Derby pretty early in the day and proposes this plan to ambush the footman, but he ultimately can't participate because he gets knocked out.
Yes.
While hanging out in Stanwin's room trying to find dirt on Stanwin.
Anyway, the footman does kill him in the
So after Evelyn's death, he stays in the forest as all the other guests get kind of rounded up and taken back inside by presumably Rushton, right? He's just a guy in a long coat, but we think it's the constable. And while he's waiting in the forest, the footman finds him. They have a little chase, and then the footman slits his throat, and he wakes up day 6 as a super old dude. I think it's the stable master.
Yes, because the Dickie interaction. No, not Dickie. The guy who,
Gregory Gold.
Yeah. No. Gregory Gold comes in and is like, and this is where I think also the book just gets crazy, because Gregory is banging on the door. Aiden. And I'm like, hold on, are we outside of Blackheath? Like, what's going on? And then he's like, oh, it's Gregory Gold. It's the guy. Like, this is, and so it almost makes, the way it's described, or the way Gregory's described, it's like he's losing his mind. It almost makes sense as to why Gregory snaps and does what he does.
Yeah. So day 6, the homeboy wakes up to his name being called. It's Gregory Gold, and Gregory Gold is in a total disheveled state. And he's just starts urging, don't get out of the carriage. Whatever you do, don't get out of the carriage. And then he starts talking about he never stops. He then holds up his arms and he's torn up just like Belle was. And then he kind of exclaims, like, you won't want to, you won't, but you'll give her up. You'll tell them everything. You won't want to, but you tell it. He's babbling. There's 2 of them. 2. They look the same, but there's 2. Don't get out of the carriage. And Aiden kind of observes, like, his mind is broken. There isn't an ounce of sanity left in him. And then that day is over for the moment.
I think that's where we stop, right?
We wake up as the butler briefly. Right. And there's somebody in the room with Mr. Collins, and it's not the doctor and it's not Gregory Gold, but we don't know who it is. And then he goes unconscious again. So we still don't. And then we pick back up as day 6. So that's where we stopped. That was 27 minutes of rambling overview. One day we'll get better at it.
We're getting better. We did how many chapters in this 27 minutes?
You said like 150 pages of reading.
Super good.
Okay, so before we dive into specifics, you talked about this a little bit, but like, I know last week it was just like a lot of questions. What's happening? Now that we're into the meat of the story, what are your initial thoughts, feelings.
Okay, so I'm getting a better handle of what's going on, right? I'm understanding a lot more what's going on. And I am seeing now why these certain hosts are picked, right? So with Ravencourt, obviously he's not the physical guy. You know, he doesn't have the physical powers. He can't get you from point A to point B without like passing out or having to take a break. But he is observant. His mind is sharp, and so what Aiden gets to do in Ravencourt's body or with Ravencourt's day, I guess, to me might almost be one of the most important things in this stretch of reading that we just did. Um, you know, trying to change the day, making his mind up to save Anna, not Anna, making his mind up to save
Evelyn.
Evelyn. Also, I think we this is also when we find out that Davis. Now I'm looking at Davis like not Davis, Daniel DC, and I'm looking at him like you are super sus. Like he's super jaded. He might just be burnt out because he's trying to just get this thing over with to go home. And I'm looking at him like, yo,
Yeah.
you're
Let's talk
super
about that
jaded.
scene.
I'm sorry. Yeah,
Talk about that scene.
jaded. He's super sus. Like even though he's and then I think he makes the promise to Anna, right, that he's gonna get both of them out because we find out only one of them can leave.
Yeah, well, Anna informs Aiden that he's promised her that he can get both of them out, which is why she's helping.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just flipping to the conversation with Daniel. So I want to talk about the scene, just a quick like little roadmap. I want to talk about the scene with Daniel. We should go over what the Plague Doctor establishes the rules of Blackheath in the game are. Those are kind of the big things to talk. So the conversation with Daniel is on page 100. So like we said, as Ravencourt, Aiden hides a note in the encyclopedia saying like, come. It's kind of a weird message that he leaves, and I don't know why he's the way he is.
I think he thinks he's smarter than everyone else, or he likes to think he's smarter than everyone else. I think he's also established that, you know, because when we meet him in I don't remember what chapter, but when we meet him as Sebastian Bell, it looks like he's trying to outsmart Evelyn in that game. But when we get to meet him as Ravencourt, it's like, oh, he lost because he lost.
Yeah.
What's the note?
I'm trying to find the note that he writes. Okay. So he has Cunningham write a note for him, and it says, this is on page 91. It's logical to believe that many of you have been here longer than I and possess knowledge of this house, our purpose here, and our captor, the Plague Doctor, that I do not. You have not sought me out, and I must assume there's good reason for that, but I ask you now to meet me in the library at lunchtime and help me apprehend our captor. If you cannot, I ask you to share what you've learned by writing it on this paper. Whatever you know, no matter how trivial, may be of use in helping speed our escape. They say 2 heads are better than 1, but I believe in this case our combined head may be sufficient. So he leaves that in the Encyclopedia Britannica on the shelf. He takes a little snooze, and then he wakes up to Daniel.
Yes, and that's on page 100. So this is a very interesting conversation to me. It's happening where Dan encourages you to find a host. You can't save. Encyclopedia takes, for example, letting it drop to the table. Courage would never have thought to write to our other host. He likes to think himself smarter than the other hosts. Because again, I think what makes this really interesting is what all of the hosts bring something different to the table.
Yeah.
There is an actual detective or a constable, right? A constable. That's the
Sorry, say that again.
The constable's a host, right? So it's Bell, Donald.
So far, we've seen Sebastian Bell, Mr. Collins, Donald Davies, Lord Ravencourt, and Jonathan Derby. Daniel is claiming that he is day 8. We
So
and then the stable. We think the stable hand is day 6, and we know Gregory Gold is in the mix.
oof. We're supposed to have 8 of them. Interesting. Well,
I should say we
anyways,
suspect that Gregory Gold's in the
right.
mix because he's
We're
talking to
suspecting.
Aiden.
But what I learned about Daniel is that he's jaded, he's angry. He just wants to go. He just wants to leave. So and he also doesn't, what Daniel does in the scene where he kind of doesn't tell him like anything. He doesn't want to tell him anything because he doesn't trust him. Daniel doesn't trust anyone. So if Daniel is saying he's day 8, he has seen, if right, it's a question mark. He has seen everything. He's seen all the other hosts play through, and he's just ready to get this thing over with. So I think when the plague doctor said don't trust or something about the other players in the game, that was in the first block that we read. The other players in the game, you know, they're ahead of you, or you can't really trust any other players in this game, or your counterparts. I think he was talking about Daniel Coolidge. I do, because
Yeah,
it just shows like now I'm looking at it like Daniel is sus to me. I'm thinking Daniel did it.
yeah,
I
you felt that last time.
right. I felt that the first time, and now I'm thinking about it again. So yeah.
So in that, what stands out to me, and I remember feeling this way when I read it the first time. Like I feel like Daniel's argument doesn't make sense, right? So
Okay.
Daniel's argument, because Ravencourt wants to try all these things and like
Mm,
get everybody together, and Daniel tells him that he can't risk sharing information. All
right.
my plans are built around the things you're going to do. If I tell you something that stops you doing those things, I
Let's
can't be
change it.
certain it'll play out the same
Right.
way. You might blunder into the middle of an event settled in my favor or be elsewhere when you should have been distracting the fellow whose room I'm sneaking into. One wrong word could leave all my plans in ruins. This day must proceed as it always does for your sake as much as mine. The safest course for you is to go about your investigation without interference from me or any of the others. What did you think about that?
Okay. I've seen everything. I've tried everything, and now I know everything has to go on the way it's supposed to go on. So don't. Also, if you interrupt me, I'll kill you. Like, if you,
Logic out.
huh?
Does that logic out, do you think? Does that math out?
I've super tried to give Daniel the benefit of the doubt here, right? He's just like, I am ready to get this over with. I mean, I would like to. I place myself in the mind of Daniel, right? Like if I've done something 7 times in a row, by number 8, I'm like, it's not fun anymore. It's
Yeah.
not great anymore. I'm tired. I am annoyed. Like I can imagine repeating the same day over and over and over again for 7 days straight. And by the 8th day, you're like, okay, if this is supposed to happen at 11 o'clock, that means you're taking notes. Everything that should have happened, like if you notice what you noticed on day 1 happened, then, if by day 5 you start changing things, and then everything changes. Now, all the information you had from day 1 to 5, because that's when Aiden decides to try to change the day. Sorry, day 4 is when he's Ravencourt, right? I wouldn't like that personally. I wouldn't like that because if I have plans set and all my plans are predicated on everything happening how it's supposed to happen, if someone comes in and tries to change it, I might. If I'm Daniel, I would. That's why I'm saying Daniel is sus. So I can see Daniel being the footman, or because he's so one track, he's so one note at this point. I don't think there's anything that like he's made it make sense in his head. I don't think it makes sense. I mean, I would try something new every day. To try to change one event every day to see how that changes the grand scale of things. That's what I would do. But I see him as, oh no, this has to happen. I'm one note, and I see him as like a psychopath,
Oh, what?
a psychopath.
Sorry, the audio cut very briefly.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I get, but like, what confused me about this was if Daniel is day 8, any change that day 4 brings, day 8 has lived. Any change that day 5 brings, day 8 has lived.
Correct.
Day 8 is making his plans based on the information's day 1 through 7.
It doesn't make, you're right, it doesn't make sense. Like, you've already lived through all of it, so you've lived through
Yeah.
those changes. But if you think, like, I'm guessing, right, he's like, okay, so this change happened, this change happened, this change happened, and it didn't affect anything, so I can leave these things to happen. But now if you do something bigger, like try to get everyone together, I am guessing, like, when he ran through his 1 through 4 or 5, he didn't try to get everyone together, because it's saying Daniel wouldn't have tried to get everyone together. So I'm thinking, when Aiden was at Ravencourt's place, it's weird, because I would like to think that at this point he would want to work together with everyone. That is what I'd like to think. That is what would make sense to me. What Ravencourt is doing makes complete sense. But I think Daniel is as unhinged as Gregory Gold at this point. You can't convince me that he's not, because for him to say that means that I don't care what. Look, let this murder happen. I want to go home. Like, if she gotta die, let her die. I want to go home. Like,
Yeah.
he's unhinged. I don't like Daniel, and the way we did get a physical description of Footman. We forgot to talk about that. He's blonde. He has a broken nose,
Yeah.
and he's like skinny and wiry.
Yeah.
Um,
Just
another one of
dude, it's fine.
and okay, another.
He's that guy in high school who like ate by himself in the cafeteria, and you're like, I don't know what your future is, but it's not good.
Yeah, you're the footman in Stuart Turton's book.
Yeah.
Another plan of Ravencourt's, which kind of endeared me to Ravencourt a little bit, was, and I was rooting for him, because he was like, you know what, forget all this. I'm going to unmask the plague
Yeah.
doctor, and I love that. But the twist just was so delicious, because he's come up with this brilliant plan, right? He up to the point where he finds there's a character in the book, I forget his name, it's a C name. The character, Cunningham went into his room and got a mask, and it's like, oh, it's a plague doctor mask, and I promise you everything was there. And then they get to the ball, and it's like 12 other plague doctors that just roll in almost at the same time. And
Yeah.
Ravencourt is beside himself. He's upset.
Yeah.
And I think when he passes out and we go back to day 2 and wake up, the plague doctor is like, you can't unmask me, bro. Like,
Yeah.
if you take this thing off, another one will replace it. Like,
Yeah.
and I'm
Well, a
like,
different
and
plague doctor will be replaced, right? If you unmask me,
yeah,
your situation doesn't change. You just get a different plague doctor.
and I'm like, delicious.
Yeah.
Because it would have been too Scooby Doo and too easy, but like, it was perfect. No,
Yeah.
but that was one of the other things that made me say, okay, you know what, I can stomach Ravencourt. Like, but what we know of Ravencourt's character, he's shrewd. He's not a nice person. And I think he's just mean. He's evil. I think it's
Ironically vain.
yeah. Millicent is like, when she's describing Ravencourt's relationship with Cunningham, she's like, I'm surprised he hasn't, like, taken him for all his worth and absconded. We also find out about Cunningham a little bit. Millicent runs her mouth. Okay,
She's got the deets.
she really has on everybody. Oh, he's like a side baby.
Yeah, yeah. So Cunningham is a bastard of Peter
Yes.
Hardcastle, our
Mhm.
patron of the house, and Millicent is convinced that. So they took Cunningham in and gave him to the cook to raise,
Yeah.
and Millicent is convinced that Helena Hardcastle did this to torture Peter Hardcastle as like a
And I
huge insult.
and I can 100% believe that. I
Yeah.
can
I
100%
mean,
believe that.
we haven't met the woman yet, though. Let's
No, we haven't.
right.
Because every time we're supposed to meet her, she's not there. She's
Yeah.
also she hasn't been seen, hasn't been hurt, like she hasn't been seen. Her stuff is missing. Her room got broken into.
Mhm.
Um do you want to know my new who done it theory?
Yeah, is this brand
'Cause
new?
okay, I still have DC as like maybe number one. So there's a character that we've heard a lot about, but we haven't seen. Felicity.
Yeah, Felicity Maddox.
Yes, the note at the well. She's also in the note that Jonathan finds. Is it Jonathan? Yeah, she's also in. It's just something about a character that you just hear a lot about and you don't see that just doesn't sit right with me. Okay,
And
just
Michael doesn't know that she's there, right? Mike,
right.
when Derby's like,
That's his best friend.
yeah. Well, and also he's like kind of the one running the show because his parents are absentee, and he doesn't know that Felicity Maddox, this super important person to his sister, is on site. That's sus for sure.
Yeah, like why is she in the shadow? Like why is she leaving like notes and like super like hidey spots and places?
Yeah.
Michael has made it to the whodunit list.
Has he?
Yes. And it's
Why do you think
sad
Mike?
because he knows now why Evelyn is getting married to Ravencourt. He knows also why uh
You think it's like a
uh
mercy kill?
yes. Yes, that's where I was going with that.
Much. Okay.
What were my theories from last week?
Your
So Anna
theories.
is real, obviously. Anna is real. Oh my god.
So
I that was a
your
fake.
what do you know is that Daniel did it. He's the murderer. Anna's not real. What do you suspect is the woman in the beginning is Evelyn. We now know that that is not true. The woman in
Mhm.
the beginning is Madeline. Daniel is our guy. Anna is not real. Wait, no, she is real. He's told her these things and is now leaving him breadcrumbs. You were kind of correct about
I
that
was
for
kind
sure.
of correct on that. Oh wow.
That this is not his first run through. You were absolutely correct on that. Anna is the voice in his head. Still TBD on that. How do you feel
Yes,
about Anna
very
being the
sweet.
voice in his head?
No, it's
No.
it's it's it's
No?
it's Aiden being the voice in his head.
Yeah.
So
And then this is Assassin's Creed style, put in the world to solve the murder. It's all constructed. The reason the voice in his head is so sure is because it's his handler. So that part, we don't know the voice is, but like absolutely, this is a constructed world. We learned that Aiden willingly
yes.
volunteered to enter the scenario to try to solve the murder, whereas the other two people playing the game did not choose
Hmm.
to play this game. But we don't know the details behind that. The questions that you had were, is Anna real? Uh, how many times has Aiden done this? And we learned that it's kind of an unknowable number. Like it's
Yes.
the plague doctor tells him, we've done this countless times. And I want to talk
Exactly.
about that in a second too.
Yes.
Uh, what's the plague doctor's deal? Uh, you wanted it on record that he's not Batman. But what's the purpose of the plague doctor? If Daniel didn't do it, who did, and who's the footman? So we still don't know it. We've seen the footman face to face, but we still don't really know who he is.
No.
Obviously, we don't know if Daniel did it or not. So if he didn't do it, we don't know who did do it. But what is the plague doctor's deal? I think this is super interesting. So in this 150 pages that we read, we have quite a few interactions with the plague doctor. He shows up frequently, and his conversation is always confusing and vague and not really helpful. But we do learn the rules of the game, so to speak, which we've mentioned a couple times. So let's like walk through them. There are 3 people playing the game and the footman. Only one of those 3 people can get out. There is no way for more than one person to get out. As I just said, Aiden volunteered for this, but the other 2 did not. We don't know why the other 2 are involved.
Yeah.
We know that you cannot escape Blackheath, and we know that after every cycle, if Aiden has not successfully found out who the murderer is, his memories are wiped, and he's set back at day 1, and he runs through the all 8 days again.
Again.
Or all 1 day 8 times, I should say. It's not an 8-day party; it's 1 day 8 times.
This is a question I have for you though. It wasn't even answered in there, and I think I don't know if it was done for a good reason or just it was omitted. But like, so if Aiden doesn't go through, if Aiden never gets by the eighth host, if Aiden doesn't have it and has to start over, do the other two people have to start over fresh? But you know, Anna starts over fresh every day.
Yeah,
So
so I
how?
think it's I kind of frame it. You're right. I framed that in a little misleadingly. All of them have failed countless times. Is what we're led to believe. If any one of them presents the answer at 11 p.m., the plague doctor will pull them out. So as far as we know, all of them have been in it together, and none of them have been successful.
Okay.
Is my understanding.
Yeah, I think that's what it's we're led to believe as well.
So we learn that the plague doctor is calling the shots, but is also not. He makes it clear that like he is in control of the scenario, but he is also being controlled. That like he has a role and a function to play, and he cannot deviate from his role and function, which is he states that he is there to watch Aiden.
Yeah, which
Aiden
is
is
why
there to
he
solve the
doesn't
murder.
know. Right. Because
Yeah,
Aiden did ask him, like, okay, if you're, why can't you just suss out the murderer yourself? And he's like, well, that's not what I'm here for. I'm here to make sure you get it. I'm here to watch you and watch what you do.
yeah. We learn this piece we learn from Anna, not from the plague doctor, but that Aiden will get a full day in each host, whether he wants it or not. From whenever they wake up until midnight, he will get that full day, which is why the day starts at different times for each host. So whenever that person woke up is when Aiden's day with them starts. There was one more section of rule finding, there's a conversation where the plague doctor talks about how many times they've done this, and I think that piece is so interesting. So one of the like big questions. Also, Anna doesn't get visits from the plague doctor.
No,
She doesn't have any other hosts. She's
yeah,
always
just
Anna.
yeah.
That's a really big distinction, and we don't know the rules for the other person. We don't even know who the other person is.
Are we assuming the other person is a footman, or that's just
no? The footman is separate, so it's three people and the footman. So the plague doctor tells him, we've done this dance many times before, you and I, more than even I can recall. Loop after loop, I've set you the task of solving the murder, and it's always ended in failure. At first, I thought the blame for this rested solely on your shoulders, but I've come to realize that the sweet sequence of hosts plays a part. For
Yes,
example,
I remember that conversation.
Yeah, so for example, Donald Davies wakes up at 3:19 a.m., which should make him your first host. Doesn't work because his life is so appealing. He has good friends in the house, family. Things you spend the loop trying to return to rather than seeking to escape. It's for that reason I changed your first host to be the more rootless Sebastian Bell. In contrast, Lord Ravencourt doesn't stir until 10:30, which means you shouldn't have visited him until much deeper in the loop, a period when haste rather than intellect is of the essence. One loop after another, I experimented making these sorts of decisions for each of your hosts, arriving at the order you are experiencing now. In my opinion, this is the sequence that gives you the best chance of solving the murder. Yeah, so we do learn, we learn here that, like, there is supposed to be an order. He's supposed to wake up. He's supposed to go through the people in order in which they wake up, but the plague doctor is satisfied with that, so he has mixed things up. And they also briefly talk about, Aiden asks him, why did you ask me what I remembered on day one? Right? So it was one of the very first things that the plague doctor said, or I think literally the first thing that the plague doctor says is, what did you bring with you? And he means what memory. So the plague doctor says, every time you fail, we strip your memories and start the loop again, but you always find a way to hold on to something important, a clue, if you will. This time it was Anna's name. And Aiden says, you told me it was a pity. And the plague doctor says, along with the sequence of your hosts, the thing you choose to remember has a significant impact on how the loop plays out. If you had remembered the footman, you'd have set off chasing him. At least that would have been useful. Instead, you've bound yourself to Anna, one of your rivals. So it seems their memory wipe is not 100% perfect, and so every time he does, there's something that he holds on to, and that impacts the course, or this round.
Right.
That's super interesting. I would love to know what other things he's held on to and how does that play out.
How has that affected every loop? And I think that makes sense, because the reason why we spend the first day or the first host is so like Anna-centric, or even this first two, but matter of fact, the first three are so Anna-centric, is because that's what we're led to believe, that that's the memory he wakes up with this time. It's like, oh, Anna, and that's why he spends the loop, and that's why we think it's Anna. It's done, like, I love that. It's done really well, and I think what makes it super fun is I think the rules the Plague Doctor is giving, and the fact that the Plague Doctor gets to play and tweak the rules
Yeah.
as every loop, every new loop, right? I think it's so important that he says, well, you wake up as this eccentric guy first, which you're supposed to wake up as this eccentric guy, but like, if that's who you are, and what we know now is the host personalities do shine.
Yeah.
You're always going to want to come back to that host, because you probably loved being that person.
Yeah.
You loved that life that you led. So yeah, I would think that, okay, well, shit, I don't really care about, you try to get the next host killed so you can jump back to the previous host.
Yeah.
So yeah, it does make sense, and I actually like that conversation. It does open up the world a little bit more. It opens up the motivations of the Plague Doctor, and it kind of also helps Aiden. To me, also helps Aiden focus.
Yeah.
I think he needed that conversation so he can focus on the task at hand.
Yeah. I think if you're dropped into a game and you don't know how it works, like, you don't know what to try, you don't know what to push again, you don't know where the like limits are, and so you don't know how to operate within the space. So I think he's gotten direction now. And I also wonder if the moment in which the Plague Doctor has that conversation with him is calculated. I assume it has to be, right? Like, there's a reason he's having this conversation with the version that he is, and not earlier, or know what I mean?
Because I think wasn't this isn't every time, well, outside of the one time where he drives out the house, the only almost every time we meet the Plague Doctor now is as the butler.
He does seem to have more interaction with him as the butler, but I think every host has met him. I can answer that. I'm marking on the page every time the Plague Doctor shows up.
Okay.
I think every host does.
And I think before you get there, I think it makes good sense for every host to be the I'm sorry, for every conversation to be with the butler, because now you have limited time, so your questions are different, right? So the questions you'd ask as Ravencourt and Sebastian Bell is super different than you'd ask as the butler, because you don't have time. So I think I like those conversations the best, because almost every conversation, almost every question he asks, or almost everything he tries to lead with is useful to solving. Is he's getting? I feel like he got more answers as the butler than.
Yeah, well, he had more information to base those questions off of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we also learned that he will never show up if there's a chance that they'll be interrupted. So it makes more sense, or it makes sense for him to have more interactions in Mr. Collins than in the other ones, because Mr. Collins is very, right, he's bedridden. You know exactly who's going to be around or not.
Right. And I think there was one time he tried to call for Anna, and he's like, "You think?" And that's when he's like, "You think I'd show up when there's people?" I kind of like the Plague Doctor.
I like the Plague Doctor a lot. I mean, as much as you can like a captor, like, right. He's super interesting. And I wonder, like, did he choose the Plague? I'm assuming the choice to dress up as a Plague Doctor is because of this specific scenario, and knowing that there are like 20 versions of the costume in the attic. Like, yeah, That's super interesting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. Were there other highlights you wanted to talk about?
um, no, Jonathan dying kind of made me happy.
Yeah,
When
I mean, typically not like an advocate for violence, but a violent man getting a violent death
oh
had a
yeah,
certain
yeah, that's the only
statue
no.
to
Let me bring that back.
it.
I'm not happy that a person died, but that person dying, the like Jonathan
Yeah.
dying. Oh yeah, that I was like, as much as he did for the story, I was like, you know what, get him out of here.
Yeah.
And Footman was like, you're mine, slit. I was like, oh.
Yeah. Okay, so what do you know? Let's walk through our questions. What do you know?
So Anna is definitely real. Okay, I feel that. Um, I'm. Let me see. What do I know? Anna's real. Uh, Evelyn wasn't. Evelyn or Anne. Neither Evelyn or nor Anna were the woman in the beginning of the book. That's different. We know that now. I know. I know what the motivation. I know what the. I get. I know what this story is about now. I have a firm grasp on the story. Um, dang. I'm gonna stop there because the other things are like it was a no, not no kind of thing. So
Yeah.
I'm not.
So
I don't want to.
what do you
I'm not
suspect?
sure about.
So we
Oh
have that Daniel Coleridge is number one.
yes,
Felicity Maddox
number two.
is suspicious, and that Michael as a mercy
Michael is a
is
mercenary.
on the list.
Yes.
What else do you suspect? Either about motivation, who's the killer, other details about the machinations of Blackheath or the plague doctor or whatever.
Oh, I'm starting to think. I suspect Helena is dead. I think she's not around because she's dead, and I think it's she's dead because she stumbled onto something she shouldn't have. Um, oh, can we go back to what I know? Stanwin is a jerk.
He is.
Okay, he is a super mega jerk.
I'm
um,
mega jerk.
are you really tired? I'm crying. Um, yeah. So yes. So I suspect Helen to be dead. Have we seen her from Peter? Because if we haven't, then that's another suspect. I don't think we've seen it from him.
I don't believe we've seen Peter.
I think they're both gone. I think they're both out of here. Actually, no. Wasn't Peter the person who did what he did to Gold?
Yes, he strung up gold. We don't see it, but we know that
Yeah,
he strung up
you know
gold.
he did. Okay, and now that all happened the same day. So never mind. Peter's there somewhere. Um, I
When do you
think.
think Helena was killed?
Huh?
When do you think Helena was killed?
I don't think it was Helena who left the note for.
I guess my point is if you think Helena has been murdered, do you think she was murdered before this day began or very early in the morning?
I think it was very early in the morning. So we
So
know
then
that there's a note. I'm sorry.
because Peter, the gold beating up Mr. Collins is like one of the very first things that happens,
Yes.
right? So
Was
if
Helena? Was
I,
Helena?
no, what I'm saying is if you think that Peter can be murdered, right? Because his
Mhm.
only involvement in the day that we know of was so early in the day.
So he can be murdered.
He
So they
can be murdered.
both could have been murdered at the same time. It's a possibility. So there is a note. Someone leaves a note for Evelyn to come to the lake, right? Where her brother died.
She's supposed to meet her mom at
The
the
mom.
lake. Mom
Yes.
stands her up. There's a note in the well where her and Sebastian hang out waiting for Madeline from Felicity Maddox.
Right. I think the person who left the note for Evelyn like I think it wasn't her mom that said hey come meet, like left her a note and said come meet me at the lake. I think it was her mom's. I think it was her mom's murderer, or her mom could have left the note and before she made it there, got axed.
Wait, what note? are you talking about?
Because Evelyn says to Sebastian, "Hey, I found a note from my mom to come meet her at the lake," right? Or was it a fake? It was because it wasn't a face to face thing. She's telling Sebastian about her being
Oh,
stood
I
up.
see what you're saying. Yeah, I don't know how she gets invited. I don't remember. It could be a note. You think the note was sorry? You think the note was forged by someone else?
I think one of two. The note could have been forged by someone else, and two, her mom did leave the note and was like, "Come to the lake," and she was probably going to discuss a bunch of things with her, and she couldn't make it there because the killer got to her before that.
I'm tracking with you now. Sorry.
That is a lot.
What
That's
else
my
do you suspect?
my sus list.
Not necessarily who, just
No.
like
I'm saying I'm just a sus list, right? What else do I suspect? I suspect that Gregory Gold is the other person. He's not he's not one of Aiden's hosts. I think he's the other person. And I think he's losing his mind or he's acting the way he's acting because his mind doesn't get wiped.
oh, interesting.
Because why else would he spaz out like that? I think that's why he beats up the butler. It's because he just can't take it anymore. He loses it. Um, I suspect Anna isn't being all the way truthful with Aiden.
Doctor accuses her of that, right? He
Yes,
tells
he
Aiden.
does. And when he did, I bought into it because I think she's holding a lot of things close to her chest as well. She's also playing the game, even though I think she believes Aiden, but I think she's 100% playing the game as well for herself. So I think ultimately I think she'll sell Aiden out. Um, what else? Oh, poor
Any,
Millicent. She
yeah.
dies. She dies. R.I.P. Um, yeah, I think that's all I got.
Do you have any theories about the footman?
That's a good one.
Is it fun if I just interrogate you on live for a while?
Yeah, sure. The footman. I don't because I'm confused by what like at first it didn't seem like he was trying to kill anyone, right? It just seemed like he was torturing them, you know, slashing them up, leaving like dead animals. Now I feel like he's enjoying that. All of that is part of like, that torture is like part of it. Like he's doing that because he's going to eventually get them and kill them. And I think he's a serial killer from our side, right? Not well. I think he's also another player in the game, but not like one of the players. I think he's just dropped in there to kill them, to mess with them, to make it not easy for them to do what they're supposed to do. So yes, definitely a serial killer. He's giving me serial killer vibes.
For sure. Okay. I'm trying to think if there's. I think those are all the highlights of like to prompt you on suspecting. Are there? I think you probably covered this in this, but like what questions you have. Kind of the same as last week, like who done it.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean the big question is who did it, right? But I think the more I'm looking at these characters, or I'm getting to meet these characters, I'm starting to narrow my field of vision down to who done it. I still think DC is like top. Like if I'm wrong about DC, I will be really upset. But he is the top suspect right now at this point. Why he does it, I'm not sure yet. Michael, because of what happened on the second day or the second death, sus vibes. And Felicity came up like 3 times in this, right? In this, especially in this second half or
Yeah.
second part that we read, she comes up a lot, and we don't see her. Michael doesn't know she's there. Like, it's just too convenient. I could be wrong, but it's too convenient. And I think it's what makes me think it's Felicity. What makes, like, I don't know why it would be Felicity, but what makes me think it's her is just she was just dropped in here, and it's like, don't worry about her, but I see you. Like,
One of
I'm paying
the
attention to her.
one of
It's,
the
it's always the ones you don't pay attention to.
Yes, definitely. Part of the conversation that Aiden has with the plague doctor when he talks about how many times they've gone through it and how he's changed the order and whatever. I just lost my thought. No, you're fine. You inspired the thought, and then my own brain kicked it right out.
Aiden,
I think it was about. Was it about Felicity?
your Aiden part of the brain kicked it out.
Man.
He's fighting your personality.
Oh my gosh! I can't believe I just had a thought and then lost it that
Okay,
quickly.
so let's walk. Do we walk back and try to?
I don't know.
Because I feel like it's super important for you to like be here.
Let me let me read this conversation. Maybe that will remind me. Page 90. No. When is it? Page 93. This is riveting content. What was I? It's gone. We should move on.
Okay.
I'll message you if it comes up.
And I'll be so sick if it's something that should have been on here. I will write it down to make sure it comes up on the next episode.
Yeah. Wow. It's been a week, y'all. Okay. It's like right there. There's something that the plague doctor tells him that I wanted to ask you about. What you thought of it?
Which conversation?
I think it's in the like 196 to 199 section, but I don't remember exactly what it was. Oh my gosh. It's so gone. Oh well, that's okay. Okay. So for next week, wow, that my brain totally derailed that. I apologize.
No, it's fine.
Okay, so for next week, for the next 2 weeks, we'll be reading about 115 pages, so slightly more manageable chunks. I think this next one, let's see how far it gets us to, day-wise.
Oh, I have it marked. Day. Does it say what day it is? No, it doesn't.
We get to day 7. We don't finish.
So we get to day 7. Yeah.
Yeah. We read part of day 7, and then we'll stop in the middle of day 7, and then we'll close out after that.
Oh, that is so horrible. Why would you? No, see.
I don't know that this break is quite as intentional. I think James was trying to. We really wanted that first break, which I think you understand why you wanted a break there.
Yeah, that first break is amazing.
Yeah, so then this next break also was a really good one, but then it gets us. The next 2 is just like splitting what was left in half. I'm not sure the exact placement is quite as intentional.
It's quite as intentional.
But I'm sure it'll be fun. Yeah. So good book pick. It's kind of hard to talk about this book on a cast, though. There's so many moving parts. There's so many little details.
It's a lot. I feel like if we did do a cast, if we did finish this book and did like one, we would go for like a couple of hours.
Yeah, if we did it in one go, it would be rough.
It would be. It would
Yeah.
be. I like doing it this way because at least I feel like we get more.
Yeah.
We get to talk about more of the intricacies of the book in this like.
And I know, like, if I watch this back in like a year, I'm gonna be like, why did we not talk about this thing over here that we never even mentioned, and it was like the most important part.
Right, and we would come back and be like, let's go back to that book again. Maybe
Yeah.
a third read through, my second.
I already am taking notes on what I'm gonna track next time I read it.
Okay, see, perfect.
Yeah.
Are we
Anyway.
planning a part 2?
Yeah. Be
I
so
wouldn't
fun.
mind doing it because I'm really enjoying this book. It's
Let's
such
see how the landing sticks for you, right? Like the danger in books like this, the danger with books with complicated plots or risky plots, book structures, is that the confusion and the like wading through that confusion has to pay off. Right? It has to pay off. And I think it paid off in this book, but it's not perfect also. So it really is going to depend on, like, do you think he sticks the landing?
You should have said that my chest.
It's great, right? Like, I just told you, I'm planning on reading it 3 years in a row. I love this book, but no,
Okay.
it's so hard. It's so hard to write a perfect ending.
No, it is. It is.
It's so hard.
I feel like this is. I have a feeling that I'm gonna be like, is that it? I have a sneaky feeling. I'm like, that's it. But I think the journey up to that point
It's so
is
good.
the best part of it.
Yeah.
And yeah.
It's kind of like The Sixth Sense. Like, when you get to the end of The Sixth Sense, you're like, really? But when you're watching it for the first time and you're like learning all the things about it, it's such a good journey.
Yeah.
Same with Unbreakable. There are a lot of Bruce Willis movies like that.
Right. But no, I really I'm enjoying this book though, so I'm excited to see how it ends, regardless of how it ends. I think one thing that I'm taking away from this, one thing that I will take away from this is that however this ends, whoever did do it, I'm probably gonna be wrong.
I felt the same way too. I feel like I went into that
because everything has changed from the first block, right? Everything, and I'm
not everything. Daniel is still sus. You called that pretty quickly, and it's still true.
Yes, it's still true.
Yeah.
But now, okay, so because of the things that happened between Evelyn, her maid, the whole thing about could that have been the footman that placed it still could have, right? You see, all those things could have still been the same, right? But it's just because things happen within the rules of the book that change the laws and things change. So everything I could have been right.
Yeah.
I could have been
and
right.
it could still not be real.
No, she's definitely real. Oh, that one hurt. That one actually really hurt because I'm so sure. I'm like, look, I was like, yo, this is Assassin's Creed, right? This is Assassin's Creed all the way through, but it's not. It's not, but I'm liking it. But I do now I think my biggest thing that I do want to know, one of my biggest questions is, why did Aiden do this? I don't know if I said that as a question. Why did Aiden do this? Why did he willingly subject himself to this?
Yeah. It was absolutely one of my foremost questions.
Is he broke? Does he need the money? Is this an experiment? Or like, is this something supernatural? Right? I think he's broke. And this is it's like what's that Arnold movie where he has to go to Mars? Total Recall.
Mm-hmm. You think this is like a Squid Game scenario?
Yes.
How do you think they're accomplishing the putting him in different hosts?
Now, that's the tricky part, right? So, like, I think they're just splitting his personalities. I think there's because every the, this is something I know for sure. That voice is Aiden. That voice is 100% Aiden. That's his core personality telling everyone, "Hey, chill, relax," because Aiden knows that. I think with because this is something that happened. I think when he was going through his grief.
I remembered what it was.
Go, go.
So the plague doctor one of the questions that Aiden asks the plague doctor is why these bodies, why these hosts?
Mhm.
When he wakes up as Mr. Collins again for like the third time, and it's just like agony. He's like, why this body? Like you could have given me anyone.
Yeah,
Why
because I
this
can't
one?
do anything, right?
And the plague doctor tells them every person you inhabit has a close connection to what happened on that day. What do you think those close connections are?
Oh,
I'm so glad I remembered Oncast.
oh, Sebastian. He's a drug dealer. The knockout drugs.
The knockout drugs?
Yes.
What does that mean?
The knockout drugs. The drugs Dr.
I think
Dickey
that's the
uses.
close connection to Thomas's
Yes.
murder.
That's one. But the other thing where I think when John and then Jonathan, his connection would be he was the one who chased Madeline. He's the one who causes Aiden to go on that on his Aiden Bell to go on his journey. No, no.
No, so the plague doctor says that all of the people Aiden inhabits have a close
Have a
connection to what
close
happened
connection.
19 years ago.
Oh, 19 years ago. Oh, snap.
Yeah, it's like a really
Oh,
big
it
deal.
was 19 years ago, not the day. Oh my God. How did I miss that? Okay. We're back. Sebastian Bell, drug addict, drug dealer. If
You
so
think he
who's
was
the
a drug dealer when he was a child?
Sebastian? Wait, no, 19 years ago would it have been? Oh, because no, I thought Sebastian was a little older than
He was probably like in his 20s or something.
yes. Because he's like everyone. How old is Michael? I think if we know how old Michael is right now, it's like 30.
So Michael is 24.
Okay, Sebastian is like 40s, and it's in his 40s. I think 43 or something. Oh, in his 40s. So 19 years ago, he'd have been 20 something.
Something like that.
The Butlers, who is the second day. Dang.
We're trying to find the conversation where the plague doctor tells him that.
Oh, that's a good catch. I thought, when I read it, I thought, I don't know why
Oh,
my
you know what?
brain.
No, I'm wrong. You're right. More able, perhaps, with these men all have some connection to Evelyn's murder, making them best placed to help you solve it. Sorry, I totally misremembered that.
Okay, so Sebastian Bell, drug dealer.
Yeah.
So the knockout drugs, right? If the murderer wanted to take a couple people out, or make sure a couple people weren't able to do anything about it, he would go to Aiden and, hey, I need some drugs. Let me get some of that knockout stuff. Let me give it to these people, knock them out, have them out, right? Because what's his name says something. DC says if you're supposed to be distracting someone, I'm always gonna go back to DC. He says if you're supposed to be distracting someone, and instead of doing that, you're doing something else. If I'm the murderer, now this makes me think the murderer is one of the hosts. Oh my God. New theory. The murderer is 100% a host. Because you would need something from each and every one of the hosts to solve the murder or to actually commit this murder. if you're so pressed to go home.
Well, what's interesting is that the plague doctor's right. He's saying that all of these people have a close connection to Evelyn's murder, but so far none of them have been friends.
No, none of them are. None of them are. I mean, Daniel and Sebastian. There's
Well, at least
that,
as far as the hosts that we've experienced, none of
right?
them have like really. I mean, they all
Yeah,
know
none
each
of
other.
them,
They were all there 19 days ago,
yeah,
but
but
or 19
none
years
of them
ago. But
are. None of them. I feel like none of them outside of Blackheath like interact.
yeah, they're not in relationship with each other. So
Yeah,
how do they all have something to do with the murder?
because one of them did it, and you need something from each and every one of them to do it. You would need the wedding announcement is a distraction, right? It
Mm,
causes the commotion. Evelyn leaves. You could follow her, and while she's out of view, you could follow her. You could do whatever you want to do to her, right? Um, if you wanted to take out a couple of people, you would need drugs to do that. Sebastian, that's where Sebastian comes in. Um,
you need a man willing to do violence.
you have
Derby.
Derby, or if you needed someone to place the blame on, because
Yeah,
he's
yeah, yeah. He's a good scapegoat.
yes. Who else do we have? If you actually need someone who done it, Daniel. It's like no. but I'm just seeing like it's like the sixth degree of separation, right? Just what you don't need to have them all tight. You just need something from one person, just a little bit. Like
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, being Thomas, Jonathan is a great scapegoat. Uh, but then the butler.
I mean, Mr. Collins is going to know all the ins and outs of the house and the staff and the people and where to hide a body and
Okay, but what about the other guest who's like stuck on the road because
yeah,
he's
great
asleep
question.
on the road,
He's such a wild card. You don't really know anything about him.
right? Who else? So we have, and then okay, then what would Ravencourt's thing be?
He might be. I mean, the motivation for the marriage probably factors in, right? Like the family needs Ravencourt in order to stay afloat.
Right,
Could be jealousy. Could be mercy kill. Who knows?
right. That's a tough one. So there's right now there's two wild cards, right? I feel like again I have a solid thing with. What would be your guess with Sebastian?
So it's a like. I feel like we get the impression that Sebastian is invited to parties to make parties better. And so, right, like as drug dealers do in high society, like you need to, high society is not enough, right? You need that edge.
Mhm.
I would assume that either the drugs he sold someone or the drugs he administered to someone
Okay,
somehow facilitated the murder. Be it somebody wasn't in their full faculty, so they didn't notice that something was happening. Some people get violent when they're on drugs. You know
that's
what I
true.
mean? Just like that, some element of his drug dealing factors in.
Right. Yes. Yes. So yeah. So the drug dealer, the butler, we know because he knows the ins and outs. Maybe that's why Gregory beat the crap out of him to get him out of there because he's the other player. Come on, we're
Yeah.
sleuthing this book. Let's go. He's definitely the other player, and so that's why he beat him. So he's playing insane. He's playing insane.
Playing the game. They're all playing the game.
They're all playing the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and that's so I can see that. I can see that. So he's right. It's a six. It's a what, 8th degree of separation kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So we kind of stopped in the middle of action. So next week should be pretty, there should be a lot to discuss again.
Yeah,
I mean, there's pretty
yeah,
much
yeah.
action from here until the end, right? Like
Yeah, I
there's
feel
a
that
murder,
way. I feel that. Yeah, I feel that.
there's a murder to solve.
All right. Great conversation. Great discussion. I think this episode leaves me really excited to go through the next phase of this book. So
are we back again on Friday, or you want to expedite it?
I mean, it's less chapters, it's less pages.
Only 115 pages. How quickly
can get through it by Wednesday.
I think that works. Thursday?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Oh, we can talk offline.
Yeah, we can definitely talk offline. I'll let you know when I start. I'll probably start by Tuesday. I'll probably knock it all out by Tuesday, to be very honest. Thank you very much, Stephanie, again for picking this book. Thank you, James, for doing this. Thank you for writing that down. We will catch you next week for our third episode and our third block on the 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. See you next week. Peace.